In today's journey, we reveal our secret to staying cool all summer long. No matter how hard or hot the days get, nothing beats the heat like an ice cold slushie. Of course, you could probably use any ice cream maker, but we do have some links in the description that help support the channel, as I do feel I may be risking my credentials by exposing you to this debauchery. And although we may be throwing caution to the wind when it comes to proper serving technique, we do highly recommend that you do follow the guidelines for your ice cream machine to the letter. Unlike what Phil decided to do for the first batch. Luckily, we did the smart thing and started with something we didn't really care about. Although Mountain Dew does make an excellent slushy material, it's not really our go-to drink of the alcoholic variety. However, principle's still the same. We're going to slowly pour in so that we don't agitate the CO2 too much, as we don't want to foam over while the machine is working. Now, some foam is going to happen, and you can get a nice flavor and texture coming from the frozen head, although hard Mountain Dew doesn't have a lot of head retention as there's no protein. But speaking of science, there is a lot of factors that's going to factor in to how long this process will take. Be sure to let us know in the comment section what factors you think will factor in. Some common responses will include alcohol content, residual sugars being present, and probably most importantly, how long you leave the freezer bowl in the freezer for before leaving it under hot studio lights to set up the recording. So if you're getting some lackluster results in the beginning, try freezing the core for longer or setting your freezer to colder. All of our off-camera tests took about 5 to 15 minutes to freeze to a nice slushy consistency. This ran for 25 minutes and never got any better. However, taste is subjective and maybe this is how you prefer it, so, to each their own. Like, some people like stuff on pizza and other people don't like stuff on pizza and they're going to complain about it either way. You may also choose frozen levels based on the type of drink, such as this Mountain Dew, along with the seltzers. I didn't really want to eat them with a spoon. I wanted to drink them. But now is probably a good time to talk about why we chose certain flavors and how things are going to change. Just as a warm, flat soda pop will taste different than a cold, refreshing, carbonated one, so too will your frozen beer taste different. And without getting too deep into the science of flavor compounds and biology, let's at least scratch the surface so that we can make an informed decision. For example, because your tongue will be cold from the frozen drink, you will perceive sweetness less, and therefore perceived bitterness will be increased. So, unless you really like IPAs for their bitterness, don't freeze an IPA. On the other hand, some flavors are dependent on their sweetness for their intensity, such as fruit. Those flavors may come through more muted. Speaking of muted, if the flavors you are after are more aromatic in nature, you will be disappointed, as the lack of carbonation means that you will not be able to smell the drink through your nose directly, meaning you will be more dependent on your retronasal olfaction. Wait, I meant to not get too scientific. So, cold things sometimes enhance flavors, and other flavors can be muted. Experimentation may be needed to find what's perfect for you. In our lineup, we tried Mountain Dew Hard. This was a great example to start with because frozen Mountain Dew is a thing that people already do, so it couldn't be that bad of a decision, right? Its strong flavor profile meant that it held up well to being frozen, but if Mountain Dew isn't already your drink, then you're probably not going to be interested in it. And keeping the whole perceived sweetness thing in mind, that when we talk about freezing a sour beer, it's going to come out a lot more sour. On the other hand, because these styles aren't known for being hop forward, the increased bitterness from the perceived hopness, it doesn't do favors for all of them. And keep in mind that their higher alcohol content also makes it harder for them to freeze. But fortune does not always favor the bold, as this Urban Artifacts astronaut food does not come out better frozen, due to the fact that it is a sweetness-based flavor. That and the flavors also come from the essential oils, which are deadened during the freezing process. These kinds of beers aren't great for slushy making also because they're expensive, and this should be a fun, cheap way to cool down in the summer. Up next, the seltzers are great options for putting through the slushy machine, as this is where I originally got the idea to do this from. As hard seltzers can be known for being a bit bland and boring, and it was freaking hot out, and I thought, hey, a slushie'd be great. The ones that rely on artificial flavors do a bit better at maintaining their fruit flavor when freezing, and the additional body that they get from the freezing factor is pretty nice, especially on a hot day. And remember, just because you're drinking seltzers doesn't mean you can skip drinking water. It's still important to remember to stay hydrated. And for our final beer, we'll get a blast from the past with this Queen of Hearts. One of my favorite experimentals, but, it's about 4 years old at this point, and IPAs don't last that long. Putting it through the slushy machine will be a slightly better fate than being poured down the drain. Given that it's going to lose a lot of flavors anyways during the freezing process, it having lost all of its hop flavors, it's not going to change too much. And it's a great way of getting rid of old beer, as off flavors from oxidation such as a sherry flavor might be beneficial, or the cardboard flavor will be muted anyways. In fact, I didn't even realize it was a 4-year-old beer until I looked it up for recording the voiceover. I'm sure Phil had fun with it though. But let's do one good run to make sure you know how to do this properly. Make sure that the core has been in the freezer, a good deep freeze, for at least 12 to 24 hours. Also, get the beer or whatever you're going to freeze as close to freezing as well, because the less distance it has to travel, or the less of a delta there is between the temperature of the frozen core and the beer, the quicker the freeze will happen. With enough practice, you may even be able to do multiple beers back to back between freezing the core. But you're right, it's hot, let's get this going. With everything thoroughly frozen and cold enough, turn the machine on before you start slowly pouring in your beer, your mix, or whatever. The same rules apply to making beer slushies as to ice cream. If you want a scientific explanation, we're seeding ice crystals to grow quicker. It's thermodynamics. Another benefit from the slow pour, though, is that if we can limit the amount of CO2 that escapes during this process, we might get just a little bit of effervescence at the end. So what we can get is a nice creamy frozen foam, which adds a nice mouth texture as well. And don't worry, we're not going to make you wait the entire time to watch this freeze. It takes about 6 minutes, but let's keep this video short, and let's skip to the good part. Well, a couple good parts, because here's at about 2 to 3 minutes, and it's already a pretty good consistency to drink with a thick straw, and far more frozen than the Mountain Dew example we had earlier. But if that's how frozen we can get it in 3 minutes, what's 6 minutes gonna look like? And 6 minutes looks like I hope you have a spoon, because that's pretty frozen. And we could probably go even further, but I think that's far enough for today. And for those that said it can't be done, well, you're wrong. And for those who said it shouldn't be done, well, complain about it in the comments. And for those that are about to complain on Germany's behalf, they mix soda with their beer, so it's called a Radler. Just have fun with it. Don't be a stick in the mud. Or, just mind your own business. It's literally about to hit 100 degrees in Michigan next week, and I'm gonna do what I want. You can't stop me. And what I want to do is enjoy these beautiful ice crystals. You could even see the whiter spot where the head was frozen. The hardest part for me was deciding how to serve. Directly into a mason jar seemed the best option, but then I kind of noticed a lot of the good ice crystals was stuck to the side, so make sure you give it a good stir before you start serving to everyone. Otherwise, you could end up with more or less alcohol from glass to glass. And although there is not a traditional glass for frozen beer, I did decide that a mason jar was one of the better ones to go with, as a normal beer glass should not be forced to this kind of abuse. And a wide mason jar makes pouring in easy, and the thick glass provides a little bit of insulation. However, that head won't stay frozen forever, and watch as it thaws and floats to the top. Now there's just one last thing to do. See how it tastes. And it was pretty good. Several of the flavors had gone muted over the 4 years that it was in storage, but definitely notes of cherry and chocolate were still present. However, it was more bitter than flavor of hops in terms of IPA. Some of the fruit flavors may be coming from an oxidation flavor, like sherry, but Phil thought it was great and drank the whole thing. And what else is also a great thing is supporting us by buying some of Phil's art. We don't receive money from YouTube or from ad revenue, so we're completely self-funded, and we get a small amount of money from those Amazon links. But the best way to show your support is by buying some of our photographs and having them shipped directly to your house. You can create custom sizes and pick the material that it's printed on. Well, of course, we also have a Ko-Fi link in the description as well. Of course, the other option to help support us is by watching more of our videos. At least this was one of the funner ones, as we got to sit around drinking frozen beer for about a week just to test the machine out. Feel free to leave us comments if you would like to see anything specific in an upcoming video, and of course, as always, happy brewing.